Well, we are going to be in John chapter 5 this morning. John chapter 5. And this sermon's going to cover most of chapter 5, which there's a lot here. We're going to pick different things out of this chapter that we're going to focus on. And I've titled this lesson, get my notes open here, is Jesus is equal with the Father. That's really the theme of this chapter. You have a miracle that we're going to look at first. Then you have the Jews being upset with Jesus because of this miracle. And then Jesus at the end of this chapter really spends the majority of his time here defending himself, defending who he is. And so when you put all this together, it centers around the scripture reading this morning, which is found in chapter 5, verse 17 and 18. We'll read that again. At John chapter 5, verse 17 and 18 says, "But Jesus answered them, My Father has been working until now, and I have been working. Therefore the Jews sought all the more to kill him, because he not only broke the Sabbath, but also said that God was his Father, making himself equal with God." So that was really the center of this chapter. And Jesus and the things that he did and then the things that he said proved that he is equal with the Father. And so it matters as we look at this because of who Jesus is. As we summarize and finish, we'll kind of pull everything together and to understand why it's important. But it does matter that he is equal with the Father because of the fulfillment of all the prophecies that were spoken of him. It matters because it shows his authority and it shows his power. He wasn't just a man. He wasn't just someone that was born that was a great prophet and did all of these things and tried to fulfill things that was spoken of the Messiah. He is the Messiah. He is God. And so as we go through this chapter, we'll notice three different things that prove the Son is equal with the Father. And that statement that was made by John here. And so in point 1, we're going to look at verse 1 through 9. We see the miracle shows Jesus is equal with the Father. So starting in verse 1, notice it says, "And there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethsaida, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and stirred up the water. Then whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was made well, or whatever disease that he had." Now, this was a statement made by John of what was believed to be the case for this pool of Bethsaida, but it is a false hope of the waters of Bethsaida. This was a false hope. People were not healed. There was healing properties in this water, but this was not, an angel did not come down and actually stir up these waters and have some miraculous thing happen. In a quote, it says here that healing properties of this pool may have been due to its mineral elements. Eusebius, he was a writer he wrote about things of this time. Eusebius did. He described the waters of the pool identified within his time as marvelously red, probably from the deposits of iron on the stones. A spring would be efficacious generally in cases of weakness. And a similar scene is still presented by the hot, sulphurous springs near Tiberias at this time. So this was a false hope for those that were there, that they could be the first one. It had to be the first one, they said, to get into that water. Well, when you have lame, blind, and paralyzed people trying to get into this pool, are they going to be able to make it? No, they're going to need help, right? And a lot of these people did not have help. As a matter of fact, the man that we're going to talk about, he was lame. He had a disease that caused him to not be able to move, and he wanted someone to move him into it. And so this was just a hope. They had these illnesses and these being paralyzed, and they were hoping that something would heal them. And so, look at verse 5. It says, "Now a certain man was there who had an infirmity 38 years." Now, we don't know much about this man. We just know that he had a disease, an infirmity that lasted 38 years of his life. How old he was, we don't know. But you can imagine someone that has been lame. We know that he was not able to move on his own. 38 years. Not going to know how to walk anymore. Not going to have the strength to be able to walk anymore. All of these things, his body would have severely degraded to where he was not able to do anything really much anymore. He was bedridden for 38 years. And so that is important as we look at this miracle, because someone that's been in that state for 38 years is not going to be able, even if their bones were healed, to be able to just stand up on their own. And so we know this man was this way, had been this way for 38 years. But notice next verse, verse 6. It says, "When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he already had been in that condition a long time, he said to him, 'Do you want to be made well?' Of course, the man wants to. Verse 7, the sick man answered him, 'Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I am coming, another steps down before me.'" So he's saying, there's no one to be able to take me to the pool. You can imagine this man, he's trying to crawl himself, pull himself with his arms to this pool, but he can't. And so when Jesus tells him he wants to be made well, his mind is thinking, he's going to help me to get into this pool. But notice verse 8 and 9. Jesus said to him, "Rise, take up your bed, and walk." Simple. Just rise up, take your bed, and walk. Notice verse 9, "And immediately the man was made well, took up his bed, and walked." I think it's interesting, the man does not even question Jesus. He does it immediately. So think about this miracle of what happened here. When we talk about Jesus healing the lame man, he was able to have the strength, the muscles, all the tendons, everything that he needed to be able to get up and walk. His brain being able to handle how to walk. That all happened like that. It didn't happen with over months and years and rehab and all of these things that we have to go through today when we get in a situation similar to this. Jesus said, "Rise up and walk." He had the strength to even pick up his bed, to get right up off the ground after 38 years and walk away. That's a miracle. No one was able to do this. Not one person was able to do this. The only person that has that kind of power is God. Of course, God is our creator. And so when Jesus did this showed to people that something miraculous happened here. Something by the power of God happened here. And the man who was able to do this had the power of God. And so Jesus commanded it, and it happened. It didn't happen over a period of time. And so his power, that's a blank coming up, his power and authority are seen in this miracle. He is proving that he is not just a man. He is not a prophet, a great prophet. He's not a great teacher, just a great teacher. He is God. No one else without the power of God could do this. Now people would say, didn't the apostles, didn't Peter heal a lame man? Didn't the apostles do this? They did. But notice the difference. Every time an apostle performed a miracle, who did they do it in the name of? In the name, the authority of Christ. What did Jesus do here? He spoke it, and it happened. He didn't have to call upon the authority of God. Why? Because he is God. He has the authority. He is the authority. All he has to do is speak it. His word was enough for it to happen. You think about Jesus, we talked about this in John chapter 1, and in verse 1 through 4, he is the Word. And we talk about how by him the world was created. How was the world created? He spoke his word, and it happened. Jesus here proved who he was, that he was equal with the Father by speaking, and it happened. This powerful, miraculous thing happened. He didn't have to say in the name of someone once. He just commanded it. That's the blank that was there, sorry. And so Christ's healing of this lame man shows he is equal with the Father because he is God. And so notice the second point. Not only is this miracle prove that he is equal with the Father, but the miracle on the Sabbath shows that Jesus is equal with the Father. That's important because this all happened on the Sabbath. Now, of course, let's read verse 9 through 18. Well, really just 9 through 13 as we start here. It says, and immediately the man was well. He took up his bed and walked, and that day was the Sabbath. That's where we find out. Verse 10, and the Jews therefore said to him who was cured, it is the Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to carry your bed. Notice the Jews who have probably seen this man for many years, in the gates, at this pool, wherever he was. The first thing they see him, what's their words? Why are you carrying your bed? It's the Sabbath. Now, is that according to the laws of the Old Testament? No, not at all. That's a tradition of the Jews. And so he says, verse 11, he who made me well said to me, take up your bed and walk. Then they asked him, who is the man who said to you, take up your bed and walk? But the one who was healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, a multitude being in that place. Now the man didn't even know who Jesus was. Didn't even know the name of the man who performed this miracle on him. But notice, not one of these men, not one of these Jews was happy for this man, that he was now able to walk. They were more concerned about how this miracle had happened, or this miracle happening on the Sabbath. They were concerned with their traditions not being followed. This really just showed it just shows us more the callousness of the heart of the Jews and the Pharisees to the truth. They were more concerned about their traditions than they were about this man. Notice verse 14. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, see, you have been made well. Sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon you. The man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. And so the man didn't know who healed him. That's our blank there. But Jesus found him again later. Jesus knew that sin is what caused his disease. Now, that's not the case for everybody. Just because someone is sick or has some ailment in their life does not mean that it's because of sin. That's not what Jesus is focusing on here. But Jesus knew that this man's disease, this man's infirmity, was because of sin. We don't know what that was. We don't know what caused him to have this infirmity. We don't know what he was involved in. It's not stated here, and it doesn't matter. What's important is that Jesus knew it. How did Jesus know that? Because he's God. No one else could know. This man, it was 38 years ago that something happened that caused his infirmity. And Jesus knew, because he knows his heart. He's God. He knows the heart of this man. And he knows what he did. And so Jesus' answer to him is, sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon you. He's telling him, don't do what you did before, because it's going to be worse if you do that. He says, do not sin no more. Jesus proved he is equal with God because he knew his heart. He knew his life. He knew everything about him. It's like going back to John chapter 1, at the end of the book of Nicodemus. No, not Nicodemus. I'm using the wrong name here. Nathaniel, as he met Jesus, Jesus told him, I knew you when you were sitting under the juniper tree. No one knew that. He was by himself, yet Jesus knew him. And that proved Nathaniel, he's God. That statement right there. The same thing happened here. He knew this man's heart. That proved he is equal with the Father. And so the Jews, point C, when they learned who healed him, persecuted Jesus and plotted to kill him. Notice verse 15. It says, the man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. For this reason, the Jews persecuted Jesus and sought to kill him because he had done this thing on the Sabbath. But Jesus answered them, my Father has been working until now, and I have been working. They did not like it that Jesus broke their traditions. It was not anything that Jesus did to go against the old law. The reason is, as we know, that Jesus did not sin. If he had done something against the old law, then he would have been guilty of sin. But he didn't. He was just breaking their traditions. But not only that, notice, jump over to Mark chapter 2. This is important. This is a different occasion where the Jews are upset at Jesus on the Sabbath. But in Mark chapter 2, Jesus makes a statement here, verse 27 and 28. Mark chapter 2, verse 27 and 28. It says, and he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, verse 28, the Son of Man is also Lord of the Sabbath. Jesus makes a statement about the Sabbath. He is the Lord of the Sabbath. What does that mean? Well, God made the Sabbath for man. But it was not made for God. It was made for man. Jesus is God. If God, the Father, made the Sabbath for man, that means Jesus, who is God, made the Sabbath for man also. That's why Jesus could say, I am, as he's speaking, the Lord of the Sabbath. He created the Sabbath for man. It wasn't for God. It wasn't for him. It was for them. You think about it this way, because God showed to us in creation that the Sabbath day, or the seventh day, was to be a day of rest. And that was used to give them the Sabbath day rest. And so the Sabbath day, they were not to work. But when God created this earth, 6 days he created this earth, the seventh day it says he rested. Does that mean that he actually just sat down and didn't do anything? Does God just stop working? No, he doesn't. Because he sustains life. He sustains humanity. He sustains all of this creation continually. God is always working. Not only that, God is taking care of people. God is benevolent. God has compassion. That does not end. Therefore, notice the statement Jesus made. Verse 17. It says, but Jesus answered them, my Father has been working until now, and I have been working. Jesus said, because the Father does not quit working, showing his benevolence, showing his compassion to man, I do not stop working. Jesus showed this man compassion. Jesus was benevolent to this man and healing him of his ailment. Jesus said, my authority for doing that is because the Father's still working. He is showing to them that he is equal with the Father. But notice verse 18. Therefore the Jews sought all the more to kill him, because he not only broke the Sabbath, but also that God was his Father. But also he said that God was his Father, making himself equal with God. Notice that statement there. Christ's use of calling the Father his Father, that's the blank there, was not something the Jews said. They would say, our Father, or things like that along those lines. Jesus saying his Father proved to them and stated to them that he is the Son of God, therefore equal with the Father. And so this means that they wanted him to die even more because of that. Jesus claiming that he is equal with the Father by the things that he said. And so the miracle happening on the Sabbath showed that Jesus is equal with the Father. But notice the third thing. As we look at this statement here, or the statements of evidence. That's our third point. The statements of evidence prove that Jesus is equal with the Father. As we start in verse 19, Jesus makes some pretty interesting statements. He's going to from verse 19 through the end of the chapter, defend his reasoning of why he performed this miracle and why he did it on the Sabbath. He is going to defend himself, and he's going to call about witnesses to do that. And so he makes several statements. Now, the statements that he makes here are very powerful statements. And if anyone else had made these statements, they would be guilty of blasphemy. And so when you look in the future, I think it's about, 2 years from this point, Jesus is on trial. They're trying to falsely accuse him to cause him to be put to death. They say that he is guilty of blasphemy. I think that they are thinking of this occasion, of the things that Jesus stated here, in proving who he was and that he was equal with the Father. And so, notice these statements of evidence. Notice verse 19 and 20. Jesus answered and said to them, most assuredly I say to you, the Son cannot do anything of himself, but what he sees the Father do. For whatever he does, the Son also does in like manner. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all things that he himself does, and he will show him greater works than these, that you may marvel. And so the first thing we notice here is that what the Son sees the Father do, he does. That's a powerful statement. He is saying, I am the Son of God. Jesus is talking there. And he's saying, when I see my Father do something, I do that also. What my Father chooses to do, I do. Because they're equal. Because they're the same. They have the same focus. They have the same purpose. They have the same goals. Therefore, when he does, the Father does something, Jesus says, I do the same thing. Jesus said he sees the Father heal someone. Therefore, he does heal someone also. That means he's equal with the Father because he can do what the Father does. He also means he is on the same playing field as the Father, and they do the same thing, showing that they are equal. They're in perfect harmony. That's what he's saying. He's in perfect harmony with the Father. This points to his being equal with God. But then notice verse 21. Verse 21, it says, for as the Father raises the dead and gives life to them, even so the Son gives life to whom he will. And so they both raise the dead. Now at this point, I don't think, if I remember right, we have not seen Jesus raise someone from the dead yet, but he's going to. He's going to raise Lazarus from the dead. He's going to raise a young girl from the dead also. And so by Jesus doing that, he shows his power. He shows that he is equal with the Father. Not only that, Jesus shows his power over life and death, just like the Father. The Father has power over life and death. Jesus shows that also. By being able to raise someone from the dead, shows that he has power over death. Shows he's equal with God. Notice verse 22 and 23 now. It says, for the Father judges no one, but has committed all judgment to the Son, that all should honor the Son just as they honor the Father. He who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. The position of judge was given to the Son. This is a powerful statement. If you can imagine the Jews who hate Jesus, who are standing there listening to him, and he says, the Father has appointed me judge of all man. That's pretty powerful. That's going to make them mad, but it's true. We've looked at this in Revelation chapter 20, right? In our Revelation class. At the end of Revelation 20, we have the picture of the judgment day, and we have that white throne. And that one that is sitting upon that throne is Christ, because he is our judge. And so that shows that he is equal with the Father because he has the authority to judge all men. Not only does he have power over life and death, Christ has power over our soul. Notice verse 25 and 27. It says, most assuredly I say to you, the hour is coming, and now is, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live. For as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted to the Son to have life in himself, and hath given him authority to execute judgment also, because he is the Son of Man. He is God. He is equal with God. Therefore, he has the power over our soul, over our destiny. He is that judge. And therefore, as Jesus said, as you show honor to the Father, that same honor should be showed to the Son. If you do not show honor to the Son, you're not showing honor to the Father. They deserve the same because they are equal. They are God. Notice verse 24. Along those same lines, Jesus said this, most assuredly I say to you, he who hears my word and believes in him who sent me has everlasting life, and shall not come into judgment, but has passed from death into life. Jesus says here, he who hears my words. Not only is Christ the judge, but he is also the one who states what we should do. The words of Christ are life. His words are what will judge us in the last day. This shows that he is equal with the Father. Jump down to verse 37. Verse 37. It says, and the Father himself who sent me has testified of me. You have neither heard his voice at any time or seen his form. One of probably the most powerful statements, the most powerful things that could prove who Jesus is what he said here. He was sent by the Father. And not only that, he says here, the Father who sent me, he testified of me. When have we seen that? Well, when Jesus went to be baptized by John the Baptist, what happened? Doves, and you hear the voice from heaven, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. How much more powerful testimony could you have of who Christ is than that? And there's two other times where God announces that Christ is God. Jesus says, the most powerful testimony of who I am and my ability to be able to perform these miracles, my ability to do this upon the Sabbath, and my deity is testified of the Father himself. And then one more, verse 39. He says, you search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and these are they which testify of me. But you are not willing to come to me that you may have life. Notice here, it says the scriptures testify. Not only is the Father, which is the most powerful, I think, testimony we could have of who he is, but Jesus says, go back through the scriptures. He's talking about the Old Testament. Go back through Moses' writings. Go back through the prophets. Go back through David's writings. All of their writings. And see what they say of him, the Messiah. Because they testify of who he is. Notice verse 46. Not only do the scriptures say that, but notice verse 46. It says, for if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. Where did he do that? Notice Deuteronomy chapter 18. Real quickly, Deuteronomy chapter 18. Notice verse 15. They loved Moses. Moses was the lawgiver. They looked up to Moses because of his example, because of all that he had done in giving them the law, the Jews. But notice what Moses, that great lawgiver, said. Verse 15, Deuteronomy 18 and verse 15. It says, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your midst, from your brethren. Him you shall hear. Here Moses spoke of Christ. He wrote of him. He pointed to how Christ was going to come. And so the scriptures, not only the Father, but the scriptures also bear witness of him. And so these statements prove that Christ is equal with the Father. He defended himself. And so as we summarize all of this, as we finish, what does this all mean for us today? What does it mean to us that Jesus is equal with the Father? Why is that so important? Well, one, it shows us that Christ is God in the flesh. John chapter 1, verse 14, it says that he came to this earth and became flesh. God in the flesh, incarnate. We talked about that in John chapter 1. He came to this earth as God and 100% man. He shares the same divine nature as the Father. That proves that to us. Second thing, it shows us that Christ has the authority to decide if we go to heaven or hell, based on our obedience to his words. Jesus said his words is what's going to judge us. He sits upon that throne and judges us in the last day. Therefore, he has been given that authority. He has the authority to tell us how we need to navigate our lives and how to get to heaven. And so to know, obeying the Son means we are obeying the Father. His commands carry divine authority. Third thing, it shows us that we can know the Father by looking at the Son. We've never seen the Father. No one has. But when we look at Christ, we look at the life that he lived. We look at all the things that he did. His love, his care, his judgment. We can know who the Father is because of who he is. Fourth thing, it shows that he is that perfect sacrifice and atonement for our sins. Only a perfect divine sacrifice can atone for sins. The book of Hebrews talks about that over and over again. Chapter 9, chapter 10 talks about the fact that the blood of bulls and goats throughout history was not able to satisfy that payment that was needed for sin. It took a perfect sacrifice, and the only one that could do that was Christ. And so when we know that he is God, when we see that he is God in the flesh, and that all that he did, that he lived that perfect life, we know that we have that perfect sacrifice. We have that atonement for our sins. And fifth thing, it shows us that he is our Redeemer. Last night at our family night, we talked about what a Redeemer is. A Redeemer is one that is purchasing us back. He's purchasing us back from being a servant of sin. He's paying that ransom for us. And so Christ is our Redeemer. And so since he is equal with the Father, then that means he deserves our obedience. The words that he has given us here are from the Father. The things that we have here that we can read and obey and to learn and to study, they should be learned, obeyed, and studied because they are from the Father. They are from God. And so as we finish, are you living the life, your life, following the words of Christ that will judge you someday? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. Are we living our life according to this? Because if we are, then we are on our way to eternity. Because we have obeyed the things that we have read. But if we're not on our way to eternity. And we will stand before Christ someday, give an account of the things that we have done. And I don't want to do that. I want to be able to stand before Christ someday and be heard and hear the phrase, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant," and receive my reward. And we can do that today by becoming a Christian, by putting on Christ in baptism, by going down into that watery baptism, rising up a new person. And so if you haven't done that, I encourage you to not put it off, but to do it now as we stand, as we